Population control by vaccination was suggested in Henry Kissinger's 1974 National Security Study Memorandum 200. The document cites injectable contraceptives for women as a possible method of population reduction and control. Depopulation, as stated in the document, should be pursued, wherever a lessening of population pressures can increase the prospects of such stability. Population policy becomes relevant to resource supplies and to the economic interests of the United States.
This may be the most notorious document in the history of the United States, and I'll show you why. It's the National Security Study Memorandum 200, Kissinger report, who was the director of the NSC and Secretary of State, submitted this document to Nixon in '74, I think, just a couple years after the Rockefeller Commission report. Now, it's interesting, Kissinger was a protege of Rockefeller. He came up through the ranks and was assisted a great deal, so I'm told. It was declassified in '89, so it was top secret for several years. The focus was, again, population growth, but on the international scene. Their goals were to have a replacement fertility in developing countries in 1985, and replacement fertility in the lesser developed countries by 2000. So they're actually going to take their program to developed countries first, and then export it to the lesser developed countries. It doesn't make sense because they're more concerned, but I think my interpretation now, knowing what I'm going to tell you next, is I think they needed to be a home base, work out this place where they had control, rather than go to a foreign land and try to work out how they're going to instill propaganda to reduce population. Let's work in our home territory. We control the media. We control the healthcare system. That was probably what they were thinking. They identified target nations they were going to use. They wanted to enlist multinational organizations. Legalize abortion was key. Financial incentives, propaganda, and even coercion were to be used. Well, we have another obvious question. Yeah, there's national and global population control policies, no question. Have they been implemented? The first I heard about this organization was this article by Lisa Regan, and I talked to her on the phone when she wrote this. She was talking about vaccines, politics, and mercuries, and she just tripped into the global scene by mentioning that one of these committee members, the IOM committee members, was a member of Gavi, something called an organization called Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. Let's look at Gavi a little bit closer. Who are they? Their goals, it's an organization which has encompassed all the international efforts for the last 50 years, 60 years plus, to immunize the world. Their goals are to vaccinate, and this is all they do. They don't provide cod liver oil, they don't provide water, sanitation, this is vaccines. This is what they do. They want to improve the health of the poorest 70 nations by vaccination, every aspect, development, implementation, and so forth. They were launched in '99 by Bill Gates with $750 million. They have over $5 billion committed. A $4 billion commitment was just given this fall in September by several European nations. Their goal is $12 to $15 billion. So this isn't chump change. This is a serious organization. They want to give the usual vaccines to third world, some of the ones we don't get here, yellow fever and so forth, oral polio, which we no longer give. They're comprised of government agencies in both countries, so it's bilateral, developing governments and developed governments. NGOs, World Health Organization, UNICEF, World Bank, private organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and industry, the vaccine manufacturers. Now this list looks familiar. I've seen this somewhere before. Here's the NSSM statement. Here's who they said they were going to use 30 years ago to reduce population. World Bank, World Health, UNICEF, UN Population Fund, donor countries, private groups, etc. It's the same thing. Maybe a wild coincidence. Well, let's look at Gavi a little closer. They have supporting nations, and there's the list, USA, Canada, and the Anglo-European countries. It's an Anglo organization. And the recipient nations are, I would say, non-Anglo, for the most part. And the money we're talking, Uganda, 92 million, Nigeria, 81 million. So there's some big money. And in fact, Nigeria, I will say, was number one on the list for NSSM. They were really concerned about growth in Nigeria, leading Africa. So it doesn't surprise me that Gavi is vaccinating the heck out of Nigeria. Comparing the target lists, NSSM, their targets, for Gavi, their recipients. The list isn't identical, but this is 30 years apart. So it's similar. I think no one would argue it's a similar list of third world countries. Now, NSSM picked 13 nations. Gavi, they want them all, 70 poor nations. And how is NSM going to do it, and is this what Gavi's doing? That's a good question. Quote, the U.S. also proposed to join with other developed nations in an international collaborative effort of research in human reproduction and fertility control, covering big medical and socioeconomic factors. The U.S. further offered to collaborate with other interested donor countries and organizations, and they list World Health, UN Population Fund, World Bank, UNICEF, to encourage further action by lesser developed country governments. So they were going to do some research, science. The methods of NSSM, they wanted it to be inexpensive and safe. They wanted it to be perceived as safe, for sure. Non-physician, which means they wanted to implement this to huge populations and not enough doctors to do it. And vaccines are perfect for that. You don't have to be a physician in these countries to vaccinate.
In 1989, research was conducted by the National Institute of Immunology in New Delhi, India, on the use of carriers such as tetanus toxoid and diphtheria to bypass the human immune system and deliver the female hormone called human chorionic gonadotropin, or HCG. While the HCG hormone is required to maintain pregnancy, the injection of HCG bound to tetanus triggers an autoimmune response to the hormone, thus causing sterilization, or miscarriage if given during pregnancy. The research used 4 women as test subjects who had been surgically sterilized prior to the experiment. The research also found that if an alternate carrier such as diphtheria was used as a booster in combination with tetanus, the sterilization vaccine would be more effective. The Rockefeller Foundation and the Population Council are listed in the document as giving grants for the research. On November 4, 1996, the publication Vaccine Weekly carried an article detailing an investigation that was carried out by the Philippine Medical Association into the discovery of HCG in tetanus vaccine supplies. As reported, have women in the Philippines and possibly elsewhere surreptitiously been used as guinea pigs in an international anti-fertility campaign? A medical study in the Philippines suggested that may well be the case. A study conducted by the Philippine Medical Association on behalf of the Philippine Department of Health revealed that almost 20% of the tetanus vaccine sampled positive for the hormone human chorionic gonadotropin.
This was in a little editorial column in the same Lancet a few weeks earlier. The title of this article is A Well-Managed Controversial Population Policy. And they go on to say that there's this policy in Nigeria, they're trying to reduce population, they're running out of resources, they're growing too fast, yada, yada, yada. Last paragraph says this: during the recent national immunization campaign, vaccination for childhood diseases and tetanus toxoid for pregnant women, in some villages women escaped and hid in the bushes thinking they were going to be given an injection to stop them from having children. What a coincidence. There are well-documented allegations of abuse with tetanus HCG in Nicaragua, Mexico, and the Philippines. So well documented that the Department of Health in the Philippines investigated this. They found that 20% of the vials they tested were positive for HCG. The World Health said, oh, it's just a contaminant. They found this out because they had a program for tetanus to pregnant women and young women, only girls, when 70% of the cases of tetanus are in men. It was a subject of a BBC film, a documentary. And I met Sister Mary Pilar Versosa, a wonderful woman. I met her in Chicago this year to hear the story. They gave it to young women, and the women had fouled up fertility cycles. They had vaginal bleeding, serious complications, abortions. And the vials she tested, independently of their medical society, 3/4 were contaminated.
Vaccination has become an often feared event across the Third World. Fears of sterilization due to immunization are brushed aside as rumors by the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and others who administer the vaccines, despite documented evidence to the contrary. According to the Akha people of Thailand, pregnant women are denied ID cards for their children if they refuse to receive a tetanus vaccine. Women who receive the vaccine while pregnant have had violent miscarriages. Matthew McDaniel, a human rights activist who has been working with the Akha people, spoke with a local medical facility that administers the vaccines. McDaniel confronted the staff regarding the accounts of Akha being denied ID cards upon refusal of vaccination, but was met with denial.
Kon aka put martini more put ni me high vaccine by good me highไม่ถ่ายใช่ไหมไม่ใช่
啊，这招来不老高嘞。
啊超数啊
毛了毛，
normal 比早毛还是重
没知道嘞。
毛还是normal 一毛还是
这个嘛，招一拿买个嘛的，那都是嘛比下来来了，no。
That's what she said. Pay attention to this. This woman just said that the reason she went to get the vaccine is what they all know. If you don't take the vaccine, if you won't let them vaccine you when you are pregnant, you will not get an ID card for your baby from Thailand.
มันเป็นหน้าที่ของอำเภอไม่ใช่หน้าที่ของเราไม่มีหน้าที่ออก
มีแลกเกิดทำที่นี่วัคซีนทำที่นี่อำเภอไม่ทำ
การแจ้งเกิดนะคะคุณจะใช้เอกสารจากของเราคือสมุดสีชมพูการจะให้เป็นคนไทยหรือไม่เป็นคนไทยมันจะอยู่ที่อำเภอค่ะอยู่เป็นสิทธิ์ของอำเภอไม่ใช่สิทธิ์ของอนามัยนะคะ
อะไรดียูทำวัคซีนที่นี่นะ
วัคซีนต้องท
ำ
วัคซีนทำที่นี่
มันเป็นกระบวนการการฝากท้องไงคะคือถ้าเกิดคนท้องมาปุ๊บใช่ไหมคะเราต้องดูแลทุกอย่างให้เขาไงคะถ้าเกิดเขาเกิดลูกออกมาตายหรือว่าแม่เขาตายก็คือมันเป็นความผิดของเราไงคะการแจ้งเกิดเนี่ยแจ้งเกิดคุณจะเป็นคนไทยหรือว่าเป็นคนไทยจะเกี่ยวกับอำเภอค่ะไม่เกี่ยวกับอนามัย
ที่เป็นคนอาค่ะไม่ชอบวัคซีนทำกันอะไร
คนอาค่ะไม่ชอบวัคซีน
ไม่ชอบวัคซีนหายไปดูหายไหม
การไม่ชอบเขาไม่บอกหมอนี่คะว่าเขาไม่ชอบนะ
ไม่เยี่ยนเนี่ยบอกทุกวันไม่หาย They tell us it'll make the babies good if we get the vaccine. I said, well, but that's not all the evidence there. The real issue is they're telling you if you don't want the vaccine, you can't refuse it, or you won't get an ID card for your baby. That's the issue, not whether or not the vaccine's good or bad. It's that you're not being given the choice. And they're all like trying to go around the subject because they don't want to admit that they are having something forced on them. Because why tweak your reality? Why have all this stuff pressed in on you and have to admit all the time that your life's a heck of a mess, that you have no say? You know, like she even said when I pointed to the injection spot, she said that's not it. Well, that's exactly where it was at, but she's already like, I want to deny my reality. Nothing's happening to me. I'm just doing as I'm told. I'm on autopilot. And this is the denial that you get in the villages that have no rights. They're just all in denial mode all the time. And people come and do research and said, everybody's happy. And just walk away like that's okay. She doesn't mind about the shot. And you say, well, she's not going to dare speak out about the shot because she don't have any say. She has no power, no security, so she doesn't talk about it.
McDaniel also met with two Akha women who spoke about multiple miscarriages that took place after being vaccinated while pregnant.
Chị ăn miếng thì nó là.
Lấy chị té lu là, bây giờ chị té uống sữa chị té lu to lu là. Cái gì mà vô? Ye si biang bị choi ngay rồi, na ye si biang bị choi na chị khu choi na le, hôm nay ni mà lu chị té lu ya, na hồi xưa con nhà chị té le nhẹ ya na hè để ngay rồi si bỏ hồ le cái lu ya. Nó không mà cho con nhà lu mẹ le. Ô mà cho con le là bao nhiêu nhẹ. Là cho nhà le mà nhẹ le.
Thơ ni sao you got too much nhẹ.
Mà nhẹ chứ. Ngao mồ vô. Cứ bây giờ sao phụ thà cho giống ấy, lấy giống ấy yêu lắm ấy. 吧，那是可以有人啊，我人啊，有来快用啊，人啊来几大量啊，也需要实际来不过个楼梯塔，哦，那土啊不还，咱那要路江去，没得路。